Carnival built its entire reputation on one thing, being the affordable option. The fun ship that didn't require a second mortgage to afford a week in the Caribbean. And for a long time, that reputation was earned. But I want to challenge a premise that a lot of cruisers are still carrying around in their heads. The idea that Carnival is automatically the best value in the mainstream cruise market. I'm not sure if that's true anymore, and I want to show you specifically why I started reconsidering it. Hi, I'm Melissa, a university professor who loves to cruise and who loves to talk ship. All right, I want to get to that private island comparison in particular because it's probably the clearest single illustration I can give you of that gap between what Carnival advertises and what you're actually paying for. But first, let's start with the base fare picture, because Carnival does deserve its credit here. The entry-level fare on Carnival, it's still legit low. Short Bahamas sailings, and they're usually going to be, of course, on older, smaller ships, but they're affordable. They start under $200 per person, and 7-night Caribbean cruises, even on newer ships, regularly come in under $400 per person for an inside cabin, of course, and before taxes and fees. Nothing in the land-based vacation market is going to touch that number. In fact, nowadays, you'd be hard-pressed to find a nice hotel that you can get for that cost, let alone a cruise on a per-night basis. So if your primary goal is to spend the least amount of money to wake up in multiple ports over a week, the starting fare here is pretty hard to beat. Now, the problem is that starting fare is precisely what it is, a starting point. And that distance between what Carnival advertises and what you actually spend, it's starting to grow more and more in ways that are worth understanding before you compare it against anything else. First, let's talk gratuities. Gratuities are now higher than ever. They're $17 per person per day for standard cabins. And if you're in a suite, it's gonna run you $19 per person per day, which is up over $1 across the board from even earlier this year. For 2 people on a 7-night cruise, that's $238 before drinks, Wi-Fi, specialty dining, all those extra things, excursions, all the things. They are automatically posted to your account if you don't prepay them, although Carnival does allow guests to adjust them, meaning take them off at guest services. Don't recommend doing that. You're gonna get judged. I'm probably gonna judge you. But anyway, add port fees and taxes, and the price that you saw on that booking page, it's already long gone before you've even packed a bag. Now, every mainstream cruise line does some version of this. It's not unique to Carnival. They tack on fees. That is not a Carnival invention. But Carnival has specifically accumulated a reputation for being a little nickel and dimey. And that reputation, it didn't come from nowhere. It's come from a pattern of small changes that individually sound reasonable, but collectively change the value calculation significantly. I made a lot of videos about this. It's this whole boiled frog principle, but where the price kind of slowly but consistently goes up and up here and here and here and here. And next thing you know, as a collective, it's changed the value completely. And in this case, the frog has been boiled. Now, the most concrete example of that pattern is what I want to show you, which is the drink package issue. Now, I'm not a drinker. I talk about this a lot. So the Cheers package for me is never anything I would even look at. But I do spend a lot of time talking to cruisers who do drink. I cruise with people who drink and who do enjoy the drink package, and how that package is structured. It tells you something specific about how Carnival thinks about the transactions they have with their customers. Their Cheers drink package runs approximately $84 per person per day if you buy it before your cruise, and that is with the 20% service charge included. If you wait until you board, it's going to be around $90. Now, that 15 drink daily limit, it still is in place, and I personally think that's a good thing. This is not a debate about the drink limitations, but for 2 people on a 7-night sailing, that package is going to total somewhere between about $1,200 and $1,300. Now, here's the detail that illustrates the nickel and dime reputation that Carnival started to gather more than anything else probably does. The drink package does not work at Carnival's private destinations. Not at Celebration Key, not at Princess Key, not at Half Moon Key. Cheers does not extend ashore. So even though you're on cruise line owned private land, you've paid for the cruise line drink package, it does not work here. So if you want to buy drinks, and at Celebration Key in particular, you're limited to basically water, drinks here are a la carte. You pay for them even though you bought the drink package. So the drink package you already paid for, it doesn't convert to Carnival's own beach. So on a 7-day Caribbean sailing, you might have 2 of your 7 port days at Carnival's own private destinations, and Carnival's really been pushing them. So for almost all of their Eastern Caribbean itineraries, you're gonna hit at least one of your ports of call are probably gonna be at a Carnival private island. So if you're a drinker, it's important to know that your Cheers coverage applies to none of them. Wi-Fi, it's also a separate charge. Specialty dining, it's separate. That pattern is consistent. You pay for that base experience, so you can't always just go by that base cost, and then all the things that fill in that experience each carry their own price tag. Now, that would matter less if Carnival were still clearly the cheapest option at that base level. But there are some direct competitors that are starting to come for Carnival and making that math look a little bit different. And the numbers I do think are worth looking at. Now, of course, the biggest competitor coming for Carnival's budget market share, of course, is Margaritaville at Sea. I don't think they're exactly comparable, so I don't want to talk about that one too much, but I do want to talk about what could be a real contender for Carnival's market share, which is MSC. Now, I've sailed MSC multiple times across multiple ships, including just about 6 weeks ago. I know this line pretty well, including where it falls short, but also where it shines. And what I can tell you now is that MSC and Carnival are competing in that same price range, roughly $600 to $1,300 per person for a 7-night Caribbean interior cabin. Of course, depending on the ship, sailing date, promotions, all that jazz. Now, the gap that used to make Carnival that obvious default choice for cruisers that ball on a budget, hi, it's me, that has now narrowed to the point where that decision is just no longer automatic. You gotta really look at the prices and do the cruise math. Now, here's the comparison worth paying attention to. MSC's premium extra drink package is often roughly in the same price neighborhood as Carnival's Cheers package, depending, of course, on the sailing and the promotion that you might be able to get. But MSC includes gratuities in its beverage package pricing, and their package works on their private island, which is Ocean Key, which is actually one of my favorite private islands. It covers you at sea, on the ship, and on their private destination. So if you are a drinker, run the math on a 7-night sailing, consider the gratuities included versus not included, consider that it's included on the private island versus not with Carnival, and now all of a sudden you start to have a price gap between that MSC cruise that you priced out and that Carnival cruise, even though that base fare may have looked the same. And if you can catch one of MSC's promotions and get one of those bundled packages with drinks, Wi-Fi, that kind of thing, which Carnival is starting to dabble with too, but it brings that effective cost per person down even further. And with MSC, I used to be a little bit of an MSC hater, was not a fan. I've always been a Carnival fangirl, but MSC has really started to up their game, especially with World America. I sailed World America last summer. It absolutely blew my mind. And I love Carnival Excel class ships, but World America is just leaps and bounds above them. But with MSC's older ships, I think Carnival is a much better option. So you've really got to look not just at the price, but you also have to look at the ship. But the takeaway here, the important thing, is that the math no longer just automatically defaults to Carnival in terms of being that value option. And the pricing isn't the only thing that shifted, or at least the only thing that cruisers are starting to notice, because Carnival's been making some changes to some of their rules. A lot of these crackdown things are nothing new, it's just Carnival enforcing them. Now, Carnival's always been known as the fun ships. They say have fun, be safe, and those have fun, be safe expectations, they have been communicated for years. And what that means is have fun, but don't act like an idiot. But guests are now noticing the enforcement more than ever. They've outright banned Bluetooth speakers. I think that's a good thing, but they will take them at embarkation. They will find them and take them. They've even banned handheld fans that are not allowed in nightclubs and indoor dance floors, stuff like that. They've really also cracked down on juvenile curfew, which I think is a good thing. And I think Carnival has earned a bad reputation, and a lot of times because of bad cruiser behavior that is not always warranted. So I see them wanting to crack down with these things. But for some cruisers, that's felt like a little bit of an assault on what has always been known as the fun ships, and it takes away from that fun factor. And Carnival has demonstrated they will put people on their do not sail list for serious conduct issues. Now, why does this matter? If we're talking about value, who cares about their conduct policies and enforcement of them and all of that stuff? Well, it's about a particular atmosphere that longtime Carnival cruisers have built loyalty around. And that atmosphere is being a little more, shall we say, actively managed. And the ship that many loyal Carnival cruisers think they're buying into, it might not be the same one that they built that loyalty on. And speaking of loyalty, I would be remiss if I made a video about Carnival without touching upon their VIFP debacle. In the last year or so, they made these big announcements that they're going to completely overhaul their VIFP program, which is their cruiser loyalty program. Well, the VIFP program, as we know it, does officially end on September 1st, with your status as of August 31st carrying over to their new Carnival Rewards program, which is basically a pay-to-play program. Now, I covered this in depth. I have a video about it. If you're curious about loyalty programs and Carnival's loyalty program in particular, make sure you check that out. But it really is kind of an affront to a lot of loyal Carnival cruisers who see this as, well, Carnival now, they want to nickel and dime us. They don't want to reward loyalty unless it's this pay-to-play scheme. So at the end of the day, is Carnival still the best value in cruising? Well, for specific cruisers, yes, I do think so. If you're taking your first cruise, you're traveling with a family, you're looking for that fun American-centric environment at a genuinely low entry fare, and you're able to do that without adding on a bunch of stuff. You don't need the drink package, Wi-Fi, all that stuff. Carnival is still pretty hard to beat. And I gotta say, Carnival's done a lot of things to make me not happy in the last year. I won't go into that, but Carnival is still a whole lot of fun. I think the food is great. It's a fun environment. Their cruise directors are absolutely the best. Their Excel class ships are pretty awesome. And for the price that you pay, even with the add-ons, it's pretty hard to beat. The experience they deliver for that entry price, it just can't be replicated anywhere else in this market, and I'm not gonna shy away from that. But I do wanna caution you to no longer treat Carnival as that automatic value default. Instead, you gotta do the cruise math, and you gotta do the full cruise math. And if you're not a math person, you don't like mathing, then that's what a travel agent is for. If you don't have one, I'll hook you up with one. I know a lot of great ones. I'll drop the comment down below. So Carnival, it still can be cheap, it still can be a value, but it's no longer automatically the best value. I do think it's now worth checking out other cruise lines on the scene, like Margaritaville at Sea. They got a ways to go, but MSC in particular. And that's a meaningfully different position than where Carnival stood 5 years ago, and I think it's worth knowing before you book. So I wanna know, Carnival cruisers, what do you think about the landscape that has changed? And are you still loyal to Carnival, or are you starting to look elsewhere? Drop your comments below and let's talk ship.